If you're a high functioning person who gets up early, gets busy taking care of business, shows up for everyone around you, and then find yourself pouring a glass of wine or having a beer at wine o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, every single evening, then this one's for you. Not necessarily saying that you have a problem, because maybe it's just God trying to get your attention. Maybe that's why you showed up here. Who knows? But let me tell you this story. So 15 years ago, I was not falling apart. I was thriving. I was up every single morning at 5:30, out to the boot camp with a whole bunch of people from my gym. I was running a business, and I was spending a lot of time with my dad, who was in the early stages of Alzheimer's. And it was a lot on my plate. And I also was just becoming a grandmother. So, for the very first time, starting to have grandchildren, my kids were off doing their own thing and thriving and growing their own families. So, after a busy day, which everyone was, I would sit down without fail every evening and pour myself a glass of wine or two before dinner, and then have one with dinner, and sometimes have one after dinner. But it was just something that I was used to from the way that I grew up. And that was what you did after a long day. We referred to it as wine o'clock. So here's the thing, I wasn't a day drinker. My days were busy, they were full, they were productive, and I had no trouble functioning. But inside me, there was something that I knew. This habit was not enhancing my life. It was really just taking the edge off. And maybe the edge that it was taking off was the very thing that God was trying to use. Of course, I didn't know that at the time. So how did I end up at an AA meeting? Well, I'm going to share this story with you. I'm reading from my notes here because this is something that I put out in a newsletter recently, and I got a lot of good feedback on it. So I thought I would share it here. So it was a crisp, beautiful fall day in New England, and I was driving along the highway heading to a corporate sales meeting for my business. And I heard an ad on the radio for something called Positive Changes Hypnosis. And it caught my attention. And I thought, oh, I think I'm going to sign up for that. I can always use positive changes, not thinking anything about my drinking. I would have wanted to lose a little weight, feel better, just be happier. So anyway, I enjoyed the sessions. They were relaxing, they were mind-opening. And I actually started eating healthier and losing weight, which was all great. And that was my original intent. But something in those sessions was also opening my mind to the question of the alcohol and what was I numbing myself from. So I started to pay a little bit more attention. And once I did, I couldn't ignore that this habit, this wine o'clock, was not really enhancing my life. So around that same time, as I said, my grandchildren were starting to arrive. And I started to think about how I had been brought up. And alcohol was just a part of our family story. Maybe you resonate with that. Not in a bad way, but it was just always required at everything, whether it was a celebration or a funeral or a baby shower or whatever. We just believed that alcohol was just part of the process. And the cocktail hour was a daily occurrence in my family. But I made a decision. I did not want to carry that family tradition forward. I didn't want to be drinking around the babies. I wanted them to know a grandmother who was fully present, fully clear, fully there for them. But it wasn't an easy habit to break. For any of you who have ever kind of tried, well, I'll cut down. I'll try drinking something I don't like that much. I mean, whatever. There's a lot of things we do to compensate. No matter what my best intention was, it was hard. So one day, my sister happened to casually mention that she would like to cut down on her wine drinking. And she said something like, maybe we should go to AA. And I knew she really wanted to, and that she probably wouldn't go if I didn't say I would do it. So I said, okay, yeah, let's go. And to be honest with you, I didn't go because I believed I was an alcoholic. I went to support her, for one thing, and also out of curiosity to find out what it was all about. And I knew somewhere underneath me that I probably would get some benefit from it. So that night, before we went to our first meeting, we went out to celebrate at a Chinese restaurant with Mai Tais. And they had a custom there where they would put notes on dollar bills and hang them on the ceiling. So we did that. And ours said, Mai Tais today, AA tomorrow. It's probably still there. That was 15 years ago. Anyway, I walked in expecting to find miserable people sitting in a church basement, but instead I found God in a room full of honest, shame-free, caring people from every walk of life. There were doctors and teachers and moms and dads and grandparents and business owners, people who simply had decided to stop seeking solace in a bottle. And, I heard words like powerlessness and unmanageable and a higher power greater than ourselves. And those words resonated with me. And they didn't sound shameful, right? It sounded more like an invitation to explore something bigger. And I made that decision that night that I was going to turn my life back over to God, not just the wine, but all of it. And I ended up attending AA for about a year. And then God opened another door, which led me to a spiritual school with a master teacher and a community of people who were very serious about deepening their faith and their relationship with Jesus. And my kids at that time thought I joined a cult, but I'm going to save that story for another episode. But anyway, I wanted you to hear this story today, because God's mercy can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And that's not just a motivational phrase. It's actually very true. And it's something that I watched happen in my own life. So I did not have to white knuckle my way out of that drinking habit. I didn't have to rely on my own willpower. I simply said yes to the door that opened in front of me, and God did the rest. And today I have a deep sense of peace. I have clarity. I have presence that I can actually bring to my relationship with my family, particularly my grandchildren. And none of it came from trying harder. It came from surrendering to something better. So let me ask you something. Is there a habit in your life? Maybe it's alcohol. Maybe it's just being addicted to this thing, right? Like something that may not even be dramatic enough to call an addiction, but it's enough to keep you from being fully present to those that you love. What if there's a small voice inside of you that isn't really guilt, but it's an invitation to maybe take a look at something and to see if maybe God isn't waiting for you somewhere? It might not be an AA meeting, but maybe it's somewhere where you need to say yes in your life and simply to take that first step and become honest and walk through the door. So 15 years later, I have a great, deep sense of peace, prosperity, and purpose in my life. And it's not because I'm disciplined. It's just because I said yes to God. So my message to you is keep ascending. And if this resonated with you, I'd love to have you subscribe to the Heavenly Treasures newsletter, which I send out every Sunday. And the link is right here below in the description. And in the meantime, keep ascending, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye for now.